All right, here we go. Round 8. Billy Joe is slipping under Canelo's shots. He's dipping that head. I would look for Canelo to go uppercut soon. Whoa, big right hand. Billy Joe's ducking under and that uppercut lands. That uppercut lands. He's got a shiner on that right eye. Uppercuts are landing. Canelo is waving to the crowd. Man, big round for Canelo Alvarez. Canelo is fired up right now. They stopped the fight! Canelo wins by TKO. They stopped Billy Joe Saunders in the corner. How? For it to swell up that quickly, you would think that's a broken orbital. And that is a freaking hammer of an uppercut. Boom! That Canelo threw. Jesus. All right, so Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez just went down. You guys just saw my reaction to the stoppage. It was a great fight, a great night. And in the midst of that, both guys were showing their skill. They were showing they were just as slick as W.A.D.E Suave on a Friday night with about 4 Tinder dates lined up. That's a live stream exclusive. If you're not watching the W.A.D.E Concept live streams, you're not gonna get it. So what happened in this fight, and how did we get Billy Joe Saunders doing so well up until the point he wasn't, and unable to come off the stool, with Canelo Alvarez winning a TKO victory? Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo Alvarez, the breakdown. Let's go. All right, so first things first, I basically said word for word how this fight was going to go, that Billy Joe Saunders would be successful early on. And while he wasn't as successful and as fast to start as I thought he would be, he actually had more success here in the middle rounds, and it was built off of his jab and his ability to slip shots. And because of Canelo's inability to get to Billy Joe Saunders in the earlier rounds and even really toward the middle part, Billy Joe was able to counter him. Canelo couldn't get off those counters, and when he was trying to lead and kind of lunge in and throw some big time shots on Billy Joe, BJS would avoid those shots, mostly by ducking under them. There was a lot of head hunting going on from Canelo after working the body early on in the fight. He started to try to headhunt Billy Joe Saunders, and Billy was doing a good job of not only slipping, but he was ducking completely under shots. And he had a little bit of a tell, because as he stood southpaw, he continued to slip underneath shots, lowering that head continuously on his left side, on his dominant hand side, to get under the jab, to get under the right hand, to try to slip outside that right hand and under it. And he would counter with a check right hook over the top, or he would counter with that straight left hand behind it. Now, there was a moment early on, I don't remember if it was the second or third round, but it was early on, where we saw Canelo, as Billy Joe Saunders would duck under shots, Canelo tested out an uppercut, and he lands it, and the mouthpiece almost comes out of Billy Joe Saunders' mouth. And it's an important point, because it was the biggest shot that Canelo landed to that point, and to the point where the fight ended with another massive uppercut. That shot proved to be a vulnerability of Billy Joe as he continued to slip shots by either ducking directly under them or slipping to the outside, but so far to the outside he was almost over his thigh. His chin was sinking to his body continuously. And as Canelo started to realize it, that's where the problems for Billy Joe started. But make no mistake, Billy Joe Saunders was landing shots on Canelo. The jab was landing. On one of the breaks, Billy Joe Saunders sneaks in a cheeky left hand and it clips Canelo on the chin. What I'm saying is this is a high-level fight that we don't necessarily always get in the boxing landscape. Billy Joe Saunders not only showed he belonged there, but he showed he could give some problems to a guy like Canelo, especially again in those middle rounds. But eventually we get to the 8th round and Canelo starts to put it together. He starts to realize Billy Joe Saunders continued to duck under my right hand. He's continuing to make me miss high. Like the greats do, he goes back in the catalog and says what worked, what was working, at least in sequences, in small bits earlier in the fight. And it was the uppercut. And Canelo throws an absolute haymaker of an uppercut. You know what? As a matter of fact, there was a Chinese rocket sent into space earlier this week, and reports have said in the coming days, and maybe even today, that debris from that rocket is coming back into the atmosphere, and no one knows where it's gonna land. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I found out where it landed, except when it came back in, when it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, it was waving a Mexican flag, and it landed dead in the right eye socket of Billy Joe Saunders. And almost immediately, you see his lead eye, his right eye, swell. Like, shot lands, black eye, right then, right there. Usually that's a thing that accumulates over rounds, or you see it as he goes to the corner, but you see it right away. And to be honest, the way it looked and how quickly it bruised and closed, his eye closed shut, Canelo probably broke his orbital bone. Maybe Canelo even said to his corner, I think I broke his cheekbone. He survives the round, even though Canelo hits him with some more big time shots. But as he sits in the corner, his team is looking at him. Billy Joe can't open his eye up, and that's why they didn't send him back out. I saw immediately, even on the broadcast, you heard DAZN's announce team and their commentary team almost chastising Billy Joe Saunders for not coming off the stool when the guy had one eye, right? Do you want to send a compromised Billy Joe Saunders into that 9th round after now Canelo has not only found out the game plan, has found out the tendencies of Billy Joe, but now he can't see out of this eye? No, you don't send him back out there to go get brutalized more from one of the best, if not the best boxer on the planet, who possesses power like Thanos does when he's wearing every single stone on the Infinity Gauntlet. So were people saying, oh, Billy Joe, he doesn't have any heart, he's not a warrior, he couldn't compete? That's not the case at all. In fact, Billy Joe didn't make the call, his corner did. And was he gonna shove through his corner? No, he's gonna punch every medical expert that comes in to look at his eye so he can fight more. It's disappointing, I understand, but it's the right one. Congrats to Canelo Alvarez, a big time win. I said this on Twitter and I said this in the video that I was making prior to Jake Paul's new campaign slogan, Gotcha Hat. Canelo has a variety of ways to win, and it was going to be the footwork and elusivity of Billy Joe Saunders versus Canelo Alvarez's everything else. And what I mean by that is Canelo can do the things that Billy Joe can do. Maybe not as good, right? Billy Joe's footwork maybe is unmatched, but he had other ways to win. He had power, he had speed, he had longevity, he had ring IQ and fight IQ. So yeah, Canelo had other ways to win, and he showed that. When one thing didn't work, he went to the next. When he started to realize what Billy Joe was doing and the tendencies he had, he was able to capitalize. Billy Joe probably saw tendencies from Canelo, but he wasn't able to capitalize, whether it was because he wasn't able to stay in that phone booth and risk getting hit with shots like he did to end the fight, or just because he didn't possess the same power that Canelo has in those exchanges to really put a shot on Canelo to hurt him and to back him up and to make him second guess about throwing those big time power shots. So what's next for both guys? Canelo's obviously going to go try to unify all the 27 million belts in boxing. Billy Joe's probably going to have to work his way back up to that. It was a fun ass fight, and again, something I wanted to see coming into this fight. Canelo having to go into that tool shed and pull out different tools that he doesn't necessarily always have to use. Someone to push greats makes them greater. So Canelo getting pushed is good for him. Billy Joe Saunders pushing Canelo is good for him. Both guys are going to be better off for it. It was a fun fight. Will Billy Joe Saunders come back from this? I think so. Will the debris that's coming into orbit land safely this time and not on Billy Joe Saunders' face? I think so. But the biggest question we have to answer is Canelo Alvarez going to unify all the belts in the super middleweight division and be the first Mexican to do so at super middleweight? I guess we'll find out.